Okay, so we're cracking on with assignment unit 26, and this is just a briefing for the assignment, but we're going to go through each stage step by step. So you should have been sent an example CV, an example cover letter, and I've also sent you a Word document, which is an example layout for completing tasks. So if you want to just hand write onto a fresh sheet of lined paper, that's fine. But if you want to write into a Word document by word processing, that's fine too. If you want to print those templates I've sent you and handwrite them in, that's fine too. So that's just those documents I sent. That's what they are. Okay, so let's press on with this. So the aim by the end of the session, we should all have completed assignments part 1.1, 1.2, 2.1, and 2.2. So there's really just 4 bits of work that I want us to just really nail down before we press on. So what I don't want is this. You've got 5 units to complete in essentially 5 weeks. I don't want it to be a sort of log jam at the end. So I'm quite keen to get going as quick as we can. Okay. Okay, so if you just turn the page on your assignment, what you'll see is this. So you'll see the task. Oh yes, what I've done, I've just moved it down slightly so you can read it as one. So your tutor will provide you with examples of CV and covering letters. Look at one example of the CV and covering letter template. Make notes on sections of each, describing at least 2 reasons why the documents have been used when applying for a job role. So I'm changing that ever so slightly. Your checklist of evidence. So I've got the CV and the covering letter. You're going to provide me with some notes on that CV and covering letter. So the criteria that we're covering, when we talk about covering part 1.1 and 1.2, we're referring to these. Okay, so to achieve part 1.1, you need to describe the purpose of a CV when applying for a job. And to achieve part 1.2, you need to describe the purpose of a covering letter when applying for a job. So we've talked about this quite a lot the other day. So I'm kind of confident that we can get on and complete this fairly quickly. So when we submit, as I said, you can do by handwriting. You can hold on to that and post it to me with your other work in maybe a week's time. You can do a Word document that you can email to me, or you can handwrite and you can just send like a photo to me. And what I want you to do today is I want you to be completing the tasks, and then I want you to photograph it and then email it to me. So I want to make sure you're there. I want to make sure you're working, and I want you to give me the opportunity to check your work as we're working through. So I need you to have that capacity. I think you're young folk, you have these skills. So if anyone really struggles, please let me know in the chat box, and we'll find an alternative way. But that's the intention. I'm going to give you a few jobs to do today, and you're going to just give a little snapshot of what you've got and send me that picture. So I'll talk you through how I want your work submitted, but when you do complete work, if you're writing it out by hand, I need to be absolutely sure I've got your name at the top and I've got unit 26. I don't need much else, to be honest. That's the main thing. Your name, unit 26, as long as that's there and you've got your work underneath it, I'm very happy. So what I'd like you to do, can you just take the CV that I sent you earlier? So if you just get the CV that I sent you earlier, and I just want you to pick it out, and we should have I just want you to quickly read through. So as we look through that CV, I'm just going to bring it up on my screen. So here's just an example. Let me just bring it up. Okay, so you should see that CV up in the front there now. So let's just have a quick dig into it, see what we see what we can see. And this is a fairly generalized one. So there's some bits I've left blank, some bits which are sort of a little bit more involved. So when we look at a CV, really we have to put it in mind that the person receiving your CV may have a big stack of them. So the one thing that you're doing is you haven't met these people. So when we consider the object of your CV, when you sort of send it in, you think, right, the purpose of this CV is really to try and get an interview, is trying to get the opportunity to sit in front of that person who's doing the recruiting and show them your qualities and skills. So number one, the purpose is to try and get an interview. When we think what else we're trying to do with it, the personal statement at the top is a really important statement of your suitability for that role. So it should capture the attention. So we can kind of describe it, the document, as being one, to try and get get an interview, and we're going to do it by capturing the attention of that recruiter. I think I'm dropping out a little bit. I sometimes get these little messages. Okay, Luke, thank you for that. I'm going to just take you into another room, just very, very briefly, where the internet should be a little bit better. Okay. So apologies for that. So my internet connection is a little bit better here generally. So I'm going to talk through in stages here. So yeah, so essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to capture the attention of the recruiter. We're summarizing our key skills and we're showing our suitability for the role. We include a section on our employment history. So we want to show that we've either got potential to do that role or that we've had skills that are transferable to that role. We're also including sections on our education, and we're also including sections on hobbies and interests. So we're trying to show we're a well-rounded sort of person. So the CV you've got should include a lot of detail that will allow that recruiter to make a kind of a fairly quick judgment on whether you're worth inviting in for an interview. So now when we look at this kind of concept of a CV, we're trying to complete our part 1.1, the purpose of a CV. So what you're going to look at is this. So number one, you're going to explain that the CV is there primarily to get a job interview. So I've kind of got a lead-in phrase there. So what I'd like you to do is just give me what you'd put into that phrase to create an explanation of the purpose of a CV. So that's your job. Just in the chat box now, I just want you to write the 2 words or 2 phrases that you're going to add to that first explanation of a CV. Okay, so you're going to explain the CV is there primarily to get a job interview, and that section in blue is what I want you to kind of complete. So you're saying a CV is a potential employer as part of an application process. You should view its main purpose as being So I just want you to write that into the chat box now, if you could. So just get going now, please. So you might look at that first line and say a CV is a, you could say is an important document. And then think about what its main purpose is. What did I just say? So it's about really getting that interview, wasn't it? Okay, yeah, there's a couple of people just sent me a couple of things privately. This is great. So what we've got is a couple of good ideas here, actually. So you're explaining that the CV is there to get an interview, really. So number one, we're really trying to hone this down, describe the purpose of a CV, and we're really breaking it down into three things. So a CV is a document you can present to a potential employer as part of an application process. So we've put it as someone's written in. It's a crucial document. This is really good. So you could say it's an important document you can present to a potential employer, a crucial document you can present to a potential employer, or just a document you can present to a potential employer as part of an application process. You should view its main purpose as being to get an interview, to sell yourself the best way. Absolutely perfect. So it's really getting across those two things. It's a document, it's there to get an interview. How you expand upon it is really up to you. So next up, in the chat box, if you could. So what I want you to complete here. So the number 2 purpose of a CV is that it's there to detail your skills, education, and experience. So again, you're completing the section I've written in blue. So this one I think is a little bit easier actually. So there are sections to detail, and then I want you to put what you'd add into that explanation. Okay, so give you 1 minute to do this. Pop in the chat box. That's good, Troy. Thank you for sending that. Okay, a couple coming in. Oh. Good. There's a couple of ideas. Good stuff coming in. Sorry, I think the weather's playing havoc with my internet connection. So great. Yeah, some really nice ideas. So to explain, the CV is there to detail your skills, education, and experience. You're saying there are sections to detail your skills, education, and experience to demonstrate to an employer of your ability to complete the role, of your suitability for the role. Good couple of ideas coming in. So last one. So the other thing you need to say about the purpose of a CV is that you can tailor it to the position you're applying for. So all I want you to complete here is that section in blue. So you can tailor individual sections to the position you're applying to. For example, and then I just want you to expand and continue that. So you might sort of think about transferable skills. you might explain maybe how your interests have linked into your interest in a particular job role. So just give me your ideas about how you might finish that explanation. Okay, so a couple of good examples coming in as well. So you can tailor individual sections to the position you're applying for. For example, you might use it to emphasize teamwork if you're applying for a job in the fire service, for example. You might tailor individual sections to position you're applying for. For example, if you don't have experience in the job, you will show transferable skills. Yes, very good stuff coming in there. So excellent stuff. Well done. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you. So really, when we're talking about the purpose of a CV, those are the three things we need to consider. I'm going to pop up the template that I sent out, just so we all know what I'm banging on about. So what I've sent you is this. Okay, so what you can see here is a template. Now, what I'd like is whether you've got options. So you can do this handwritten, or you can do it directly onto this template. I don't mind which. If it's handwritten, please take a fresh sheet of paper and please make it neat so I can read it. Whatever you choose, I need your name at the top, and I need you to note it's Unit 26 and you're addressing 2.1. Okay, so that's most important. So you can handwrite, or you can type directly into this, or you can print this off and handwrite into it. I don't mind. Now, what I need you to do is to complete this. You're going to complete that 1.1. Describe the purpose of a CV when applying for a job. Now, in a second, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to complete that. So, when we think about the 3 key points we're going to cover, what we need to include are the 3 things that were on the previous slide. So if you're happy with that template there, I'm going to bring the slide up. Here. So what we've got is this. Number 1 is there to get an interview. Number 2 is there to detail your skills, education, and experience. And then number 3, it's there to be tailored to the position that you're applying for. So those are the 3 points I want you to get across in your explanation or your description of the purpose of a CV. So I'm going to start the stopwatch. You've got 5 minutes to complete that. So I'm going to pause my presentation. You're going to crack on with that. Once you've completed it, can you just take a photo of it? Okay, so I just want you to take a photo of it if you're handwriting. If you're doing it on a word processed document, just save it. Okay, so for the minute, I just want you to take a photo if you're handwriting it, or save a copy if you're word processing. Okay. If anyone's unsure, you need to write in the chat box now. Okay. Otherwise, clock's ticking. 5 minutes. So hopefully you've now got for me a little explanation. So you're asked to describe the purpose of a CV. So you can say that a CV is there to show potential employers. Or the CV is an essential document you can show to your potential employers. And the purpose really is to aim to get a job interview. You can explain that there's sections which you can use to specifically detail your skills, education and experience to show your suitability for a role. And you can say that another purpose of the CV is to tailor your own job application for particular specific roles. So you might emphasize particular skills such as team working to work in an environment where the job advert specifically requests team working. So any sort of variation on that theme is ideal, but it's those three things I want you to get across. It's there to get a job interview, there to detail your skills, education and experience, and then it's tailorable for individual situations. Okay, so let's press on. Oh, there we are. So now we're going to look at a covering letter. So what we've got here is a covering letter. So this is someone applying for a gym job. On this picture I've got here, I've got little arrows. I want you to tell me what those arrows are drawing your attention to. So we'll label the top one number 1, second one number 2, 3, and 4. So I wish to apply for the role of gym instructor, currently being advertised on reed.co.uk, so a big employment website. Please find enclosed my CV for your consideration. As you can see from my attached CV, I have over 1 year's experience in the fitness industry, and I believe the knowledge and skills built up during this time make me right or perfect or the perfect candidate for the role. So this isn't a finished version. In my role as an assistant instructor at 24 Hour Fitness, I've been responsible for providing gym induction and ensuring the gym floor is managed, which, when coupled with my enthusiasm and dedication to providing excellent customer service, has helped the business to grow and develop an excellent reputation within the local area. I'm confident I can bring this level of success with me to your organization and help Globo Gym build upon their reputation as the market leader in premium leisure sector. With my previous experience and expertise, I believe my contribution will have an immediate impact on the business. Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to meeting you to discuss my application further. So I just want you to look down at those 4 points and just in the chat box, tell me what is being explained at each of those points. So your next task is going to be to describe the purpose of a covering letter. So really, what are these sections of this covering letter saying to you? So just pop in the chat box. What's that first section about? What's the second section? What's the third section for? And what's that fourth section for? So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So just have a quick read through again. And I just want you to pop in the chat box what you feel each section is there for. Okay, go. Yeah, some good idea, Carl. So talking about bringing sort of identifying keywords to catch an employer's eye. So yeah, that's one purpose of that covering letter, and that's why it's quite good to pick out particular words from the job advert that you can bring into your covering letter or CV. Good. But what about each section? What's number 1 doing? What's number 2? What's number 3? And what's number 4? Okay, let's have a look at number one, and then we can maybe sort of have a think as we go. So what we've got, let's have a look. Is this going to work? Here we are. Oh, they all come up. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so what we can see is number one is about conveying your interest. So first of all, you're conveying your interest and confirming the job that you're applying for. One thing you have to remember is that an organization, so imagine you're applying for a job at, say, a David Lloyd gym. They have people involved in operations, so, pool plant operations, maintenance. They'll have a bar and a restaurant, so they'll have people applying for job roles. They'll have cleaners, they'll have people applying for cleaning roles. They'll have training jobs, and within that, you'll have some gym instructors, some personal trainers, some studio class conductors. So you need to convey your interest, but also confirm the job role that you're applying for. The second point asks you to confirm your experience. The third one asks you to really kind of explain your current role and what you're responsible for. A little bit of it also is about getting across your achievements in that role. So you're kind of getting across the things that you've done. So your current role, what you're doing, what you're capable of, but also beginning to bring in some of those achievements. And then really we're using that end point to summarize that suitability for a role. So across that covering letter, if you had 10 CVs to wade through, you're not going to read these in huge depth. You want to sort of scan it, pick out the key points. So number one, you need to know people really understand that role you're applying for. You want to see that their background is suitable, what they're currently doing and what their achievements briefly have been, and then their suitability for the role. So we'll move on to the next section. So here now what I'm going to get you to do is kind of the same thing in the last slides, but I'm just kind of putting on you a little bit more. You're going to come up with your own lead-in phrases. So if we describe that the purpose of a covering letter is really threefold, there's kind of three things I want to consider. Number one, you're showing your interest. You're conveying your interest and you're confirming the job you're applying for. Number two, you're giving examples of abilities you've got and experience you've had. So on the previous slide, the covering letter also talked about their current role. So to give you examples of abilities, your current role. And then lastly, just demonstrate your ability to write and communicate properly. So what I'd like you to do now is attempt your 1.2 task. So again, use a template or handwrite, but put 1.2 at the top. And you can use my lead-in phrases in blue if you like. So you're describing the purpose of a covering letter. So you could say the covering letter is essentially is initially to convey your interest in a job and confirm the job that you're applying for. You can say it will allow a job applicant to detail their previous experience and the current abilities they can bring to a role. You can finish by saying a well-produced covering letter also demonstrates to an employer your ability to communicate effectively in written form. You could say it also demonstrates to an employer that you're tailoring your application to their organization. Whatever you come up with, I want you to cover those 3 points: that it's there to convey interest, give an example of your abilities, and demonstrate your writing abilities. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to complete that. And then when you've done it, I want you to take a photo. We're going to take a break in a short while. During that break, I want you to send that photo to me. Okay? So I'm going to start the timer. Gone sausage fingered with my phone. Where's it gone? Okay. So 5 minutes starts now. Any questions along the way, just pop them in the chat box and I'll address them. Okay, so 5 minutes starts now. Troy, which section did you want about the letter? I've just got a little message from you. Troy, if you just want to confirm your query, then I can get back to you. Okay, so what you should see on your screens is the assignment template, just so we all kind of know exactly what we're creating. So hopefully you've had enough time to get most of it down. Don't worry if you haven't quite finished it, you can get a bit of time at the end. So this is the assignment brief. So you're using a CV and covering letter to apply for a job. And what we're addressing is task 1. So it's this point 1.1 and 1.2. So describe the purpose of a CV when applying for a job, and describe the purpose of a covering letter when applying for a job. So you should now have 2 sort of separate answers to those questions, each one addressing a couple of key points. So the purpose of the CV, remember, a lot of it was about kind of really the purpose is really to try and get a job interview. It's also about detailing your skills, experience, and education, and summarizing your suitability for a job. So we talked a little bit about the purpose of a covering letter, and we saw those 3 or 4 components. It was confirming your interest in that job. It was giving a background of your skills, suitability, and achievements. And so essentially you should now have, with those each answer, 3 or 4 key points that explain the purpose of initially a CV and then a covering letter. Make sure if you've handwritten, you've got Unit 26 and your name right at the top. If you'd word processed, just use my template that I've sent out. And again, make sure it's very visible where your name and that Unit 26 is. Make sure you save that now. If you've been handwriting it, if you could just take a quick photo of your work. And what we'll do is we'll just grab a quick break now. So it's 8 minutes past. Let's reconvene at 18 minutes past. Then we'll get the second half of that work done. So well done so far. Okay. Press on. So we've just finished describe the purpose of a CV when applying for a job, and describe the purpose of a covering letter when applying for a job. We've used a slightly different format to the one that's identified in the assignment. So the next bit we're going to keep to the format of the assignment brief. So if you can just have a look at this task. So you can have a read on the document that you've been sent, or you can just read it off the screen here if it's large enough. So just have a quick look over that. So saying looking at the examples you used in task 1, what really stands out and why is that information needed? So I sort of draw your attention to the CV and the covering letter. So you can look over those 2 documents and highlight the sections. You don't need to, but we kind of talked about each one individually. And then from that, you're going to create 2 spider diagrams. So the spider diagrams are there to identify the types of information that could be included or should be included in each document when applying for your chosen job role. So you're going to give at least 3 points per document. So hopefully we'll have quite a bit to add to that as well. So what you're going to do for this bit, you're going to just create 2 spider diagrams. So I'll give you an example of a starter in a minute. So let me just turn back to my sheet. So at the bottom here, just on the where it says 2.1, so this is the grading criteria. So you're going to identify the type of information appropriate to include in a CV. So literally it's just about going down those sections and saying this is what's being included. And then you're identifying the type of information appropriate to include in a covering letter. So let's just go through those now. So we finished talking about the purpose of a covering letter. So you've got those three purposes. So it's about conveying your interest, giving your abilities, your background, your current role, and also just showing you can write. So we kind of had those nice lead-in phrases there. So we're now moving on to task 2, which is identifying the type of information appropriate to include in a CV, and identify the type of information appropriate to include in a covering letter. So, so what I've got here is 2 lists. So I've got on the left-hand side things that you should always include in a CV, and things that you should conditionally include in a CV. So I put conditionally as things. Sometimes there's things that you might for some jobs and might not for others. So I just want you to just quickly in the chat box note what you would always include in a CV. So let's just say name is a given, but pop what you will always include in every CV. So I want everyone to come up with at least 4 things. So we'll assume we've got name. Give me 4 other things that you're going to include in a CV. Okay, you've got 1 minute to do that. So get on that quickly. Okay, good. So someone's brought in experience, which is good. Yeah, absolutely. So this is work experience. Absolutely. Okay, so we've got a few coming in. Let me add those in. So yes, good. So someone's put contact details, full name, full address, mobile number, and email address. I would probably put the caveat that if you're popping it online for whatever reason, or even if you don't know, you maybe sort of maybe have reservations about the person you're applying for, you don't necessarily have to have the full address at that point. You can give sort of just details of the region that you're from, where you're sort of available to work. So you don't need it. There's some situations where that may be kind of conditional. So if you're just sort of posting up on an online job board, whatever, and you feel that maybe your details are kind of too accessible, that might be something you want to just leave off. So you include a profile. Yeah, someone's coming with that. Well done. So you include a snapshot profile or personal statement, which is what we were doing the other day, to highlight your key attributes, your relevant achievements and skills, and your career aims. So this is kind of a bit like a snapshot of a personal statement in a way. So it's kind of just we talked about it the other day, just those 3 sentences maximum that just sort of allow that employer a quick overview to see if, a quick scan, pick out those keywords. So a profile or personal statement of who you are, your key attributes, your achievements, and your skills and career aims. So just a very quick snapshot. You want to include your previous work experience. So this is really important. So the potential employer gets an idea of what you're coming with. If you're coming straight out of college or straight out of school, you may just make more of your academic experience and sort of dig in and talk about the key things that you've gained from your academic experience, things like project writing, team working, maybe pick up particular units you've worked on. We want to include your education and training. Well done, someone else has come in with that. And your skills and achievements. So these are always things we'd include in our CV. you may have a little bit at the end where you just talk about your interests. A note on that, actually, when we come to create your CVs, remember, a lot of people like socializing. A lot of people like going to the cinema. These are not sort of CV-worthy things to include. If you're doing things that kind of show your well-rounded nature, that maybe sort of allow you to show your you put you in a good light, things like writing your own blogs, organizing clubs, doing any voluntary or charity work is really nice stuff to include on the CV. I've got a couple of things for conditionally included. You don't necessarily have to put your age on a CV unless it's, unless there's a particular age has been specified by the job. So it might not be, such an issue for you as young people starting out. But for me, getting on in the years, essentially you should be judged on your skills, your potential and experience. So you shouldn't have to put in your date of birth into a job application. You also don't need a photo. Unless you're acting or modeling, a CV doesn't need that. You might, you may feel it's relevant for some roles to show your sort of vibrancy and suitability, but generally for most kind of professional roles, you don't need that sort of that photo built into your CV. You don't necessarily even need your gender a lot of the time as well. So if it's relevant to the role, put it in. If it's not, it doesn't necessarily need to be there. Some jobs you might want to specify that you are eligible to work. So if you're applying for jobs abroad, for example, you might want to note your eligibility for work. You might also want to note some sort of work. You could sometimes note down, for your how long your notice period is and how available you are to work, how long it will take you to be employed. You don't always need references on your CV. You could state that they're available on request. References take up quite a chunk on a CV. So it may be useful for you to just hold them back, but maybe at the bottom just say references are available on request. Some employers want a reference of, they'll literally want a past employer or an academic reference. Some employers will just want a kind of a social reference, someone who can vouch for you. Certain jobs need people in certain positions in society to act as a reference. So it's kind of it's something you can hold back, but I think it's always useful to offer that possibility of a reference. So what we're going to do, I'm going to get you to work on the task now, and we've got to do two very quickly. So we're going to have less than 10 minutes on each one, and then we're kind of done. So what you're asked to do is you're asked to create a spider diagram, essentially of all the information that I've got on this slide. So I'm going to show you what your spider diagram will look like over the page. I'm going to get you going on it, and then I'll flick back to this page so you've got that option of looking at this. So what you're going to do, this is your task. So again, take a fresh sheet of paper if you're handwriting. And what I'd like you to do is this task. So 2.1, identify the information to include in a CV. So what you're asked to do is to create a spider diagram. And on here, I've got two kind of approaches to it. So what you can see is in the middle, I've just given a title. So right in the center of the page, I've just put information to include in a CV. As it's something that you're going to formally submit, I want your name and I want the criteria you're addressing at the top of the sheet. So your spider diagrams can work in two ways. So let's say for number one, let's just work down that CV. We're putting in the information we have to include in the CV. So in this area, what I've done is I've just put a line going out, put contact details. At the end of that, I've refined what I include in those contact details. And then I've put a little note about those contact details. So all I've got, one main heading, the little subsections, and then a little bit of a written note at the edge of the page where I'm able to write that little bit more. So that's one way you can do it. The second version, I've just got a nice big heading on the way out on that spider's leg. And then in the middle, I've got a much longer space for a note. So you could either have one heading and then a very long note, or you can have a little heading, subsections, and then little notes to clarify. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave that up there for a second, and then I'm going to flip back to the previous slide, which contains essentially the information you need to include. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to open the chat box if people have got any problems. I'm going to start a timer set at 10 minutes. So for 10 minutes, you're going to create a complete spider diagram containing all the things that you need to include on a CV. So it's identifying initially those key headings, and then just add little notes if there's any areas where you need to clarify. So you're adding key headings, providing short notes to clarify, and when you've done it, just create a little photo that you're going to send me in a while. Okay, so I'll leave that example up there. I'll just clear off because it's becoming a little bit of a mess. So that's what it will look like once you've begun to fill in the gaps. And in a second, I'm just going to flick back to that previous slide and you can have a look at what that looks like. So, okay, on your marks, get set and go. Done. So if you just want to pop in the chat box, see how, let me know you've finished. So whilst you were doing that, I just tried to sort of, as much as anything, just sort of show a very basic way of completing it. What I would say is that if your style is like what I've added, just pop a little bit of an extra note on what else you might include. So for example, where it says the heading education and training, you could just put summarize previous schools, university, colleges, and any other professional courses you've added. So just add a little bit extra, just so it's not just kind of one word headings. But it doesn't need to be huge, just as long as you can really summarize the points that were on that previous diagram. So remember, you should have a PDF of the presentation I'm working through today. So if at any point you need to go back into that, you should have the work there. Let's press on. So what I'm looking at here is, let me just clear that off. Okay, so we're now looking at the appropriate information to include in that covering letter. So we haven't got much time. I'm going to go really quick. So what you need include a salutation. So if you're writing Dear Sir or Madam, you end the section yours faithfully. If you know their name and you've spoken to them, you end yours sincerely. You're confirming what you're applying for, i.e. the role and where it's advertised. So if you think back to that covering letter that you looked at earlier, you're confirming the role that you're applying for, where it's advertised. You're confirming your interest in your job and kind of why. You're confirming what skills you can offer, what your experience is, and kind of what personal qualities you bring as well. So a couple of you have sent ideas of covering letters and just sort of talking about your enthusiasm, your passion for particular job roles. And lastly, where you can be contacted for further information and also your availability for interview. There's no point applying for a job if you know you're out of the country for the next 2 weeks. A lot of employers will take that. You can say I'm on annual leave for 2 weeks and I'll be available from a particular date. Just confirm when you're available from. I've put a list on here on things you don't include. We're running a little bit low on time. So I'm going to leave that off. But what I would say is don't include I'd certainly say bad mouthing of your current employer. Don't sort of explain you're bored in your current role. Explain why you're excited about applying for the new role. Don't sort of leave your past experiences on the table here. So most importantly, just kind of be positive about the job role you're applying for, and be positive about the experiences and qualities that you're going to bring. So what I'd like you to do, I want you to keep that same diagram format. So in the center, as a central image, I want you to include the information appropriate to include in a covering letter. So you could even just literally have that heading as your central image on your diagram. You're then making each one of these a separate heading, okay? And each one of those separate headings, you're just going to provide a little note about what you're on about. So essentially, the information appropriate to include in the covering letter, you'll just have one heading, which is salutation. So address it to the appropriate person and use the appropriate format, dear sir or madam, or to a named person. Have one section which says you're confirming the role you're applying for, and also where it's advertised. Companies like to know where people have found out about their job advertisements. Confirm your interest for the job, what you can offer, where you can be contacted. So really, you're just creating a spider diagram of headings and then just providing a tiny little note to kind of just explain that information further. Okay, so the clock's ticking. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do that, and then we're nearly done. So really blast through this. At the end, what I'm going to give you a little bit of mopping up time, and then I'm going to get you all to send the work you've done for me today. So really get on this. I'm here on Chatbox if you need any confirmation, and I'll talk to the group as well. So that's your job. I'm going to start the timer now. We've got 10 minutes to create this spider diagram, central image, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 headings, and then a note on each of those headings. Okay, get to it. Okay, so hopefully you had a good go at this. So yeah, the important thing you've created for me here is just to sort of to get across what you'd include in that covering letter. So most importantly, you've got the salutation. So you said dear sir or madam, or dear a named person. You've confirmed the role and your interest in a job. You're also explaining the skills, experience, and qualities that you could bring to that role. So, for example, if you're maybe applying for something like lots of gym roles want people who are particularly vibrant and energetic, and so it might be useful to discuss your personality in that instance. Certain jobs require people to be particularly sort of diligent, to concentrate for long periods of time. So you could say, could emphasize that point. I think the important thing is if a job advertisement requires a particular personality type, that your covering letter references that. You don't have to sort of, use word for word, but you have to use similar terminology to bring across, to kind of show that you're matching your personality, your skills, and your experience to that job role. So as long as you've got those main points, I'm happy. A couple of people have sent me some really good work. One thing I would say is think about the format you're sending it to me. What would be ideal is if I could actually take your electronic submissions and use those as things that I can give to the exam board to confirm your qualification. So I'm just putting on a instructions. If you've got an iPhone or an iPad, in Notes you have the capacity to scan. So what you do is you go to create a new note. I use it usually for my kind of shopping and what have you. So I'll give myself little notes, but you also have the capacity to take a photo. So if you go to Notes and then go to the camera symbol, when you open that camera symbol, you get an option to scan a document. And what that means is when you take that photo, it gives you the option to resize what you've scanned. So the best thing to do is to go right above the document you're scanning, take that photo, and then you can just adjust the corners so it comes out as a perfect rectangle. And sometimes it also adjusts the text so it looks a little bit more neat. When you've finished, you just click save, and then on the top right you can email it. So if you can email it to me at the email I've communicated with you from, so it's ben.hayward@knightslimited.co.uk, that would be perfect. Luke just said about the plus button. Oh, you might be, yeah, you're a bit ahead of the game for me. So yeah, so if you could use that, and then you could submit the PDF format, which is a much neater way of me storing your work. So I'm going to leave you with that task, if I may. So what I've got is, so what you should have is a written answer for 1.1, a written answer for 1.2, a spider diagram for 2.1 with additional kind of notes around the outside, and then exactly the same for 2.2, so a spider diagram for the covering letter. So I'm going to leave it in your hands, but can I get you to just use this next hour, and I'd like you to submit your photograph of those 4 sections before, I'm going to say 5 o'clock. Okay. I need to make sure you get this in. Some people have been communicated really well, some people less so. So I'm going to start chasing up for work if you've not given me anything so far. So just make sure you've had a good go. Even if you've really struggled, just show me where you've got to, and then at least I know what help you need. So those 4 things: written answer to 1.1, written answer to 1.2, written answer to spider diagram for 2.1, spider diagram for 2.2. All of the slides that I've given today are included on the PDF handout that I sent prior to the session. You also got a copy of the assignment template and a couple of other bits and pieces. So you've got a CV and a covering letter as well. So hopefully that's okay for you. So reminder, you want to send me the scanned picture that hopefully you can get into a PDF form before you send by 5 o'clock. If you can't figure out the PDF, don't worry too much. We can work on that. But as long as you send me those little pictures of the work you've done, or if you've done a word process document, send that document over to me. Okay. Otherwise, I'll be here for the next hour. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat box for the next 15 minutes. Other than that, just drop me an email. And I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, thank you for your efforts today. Well done, everybody. Some good work coming in. So we're doing well and we're making good time. So I'll see you same time tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye.